and we are hot. It is Friday, the end of the work week, and deer season is officially over for you and I. But today, I think a good way to end the work week is a good coffee call, episode 34. And we've got a great listener submitted question, and it's about tuning your fixed blade broadheads and your mechanical broadheads. Now, I didn't really want this to be the fixed versus mechanical debate, so I was thinking today let's start with talking about tuning mechanical broadheads, then we'll transition into fixed blade to wrap it up. What do you think about that?
I like it. I like it a lot. I like it a lot.
Yeah, so basically to start off, I've been shooting mechanicals for like the past 10 years. And before that, I shot fixed blades because my dad would never let me shoot mechanicals. And really, honestly, back then, there was no such thing as mechanicals. It was just, there wasn't a lot of them. They weren't that big like they are now. And the bows were a lot slower and they were easier to tune and everything with fixed blades. So for the past 10 years or so, I've been shooting a mechanical broadhead. And there's a couple things I do to tune those broadheads. And it's not a lot because, mechanical broadheads are all designed to fly like a field point. So a couple of things that I like to do is, first of all, every time I pull mechanical broadheads out of the pack, I put them on my arrows and I spin test them. And the reason why I spin test them is because I'm trying to find any imperfections in the spin or wobbles or anything wrong with the broadhead. So what I like to do is put it on, put the broadhead on my arrow, and then I like to put it against a hard surface. So, on a table or something, and I spin it. Or you can spin it in your hand, but I spin it and see if there's any imperfections. Now, if I do find a wobble or an imperfection, I will start by replacing the blades. I'll take the blades out, put new ones in, spin again. And honestly, maybe I've just had good luck, but I've only had to take the blades out of a couple broadheads, and once I've spun them again, they're usually pretty good. I mean, they all spin really well. So that'd be the first thing I do. And the second thing I do is I usually tend to shoot a heavier arrow. The reason being is because I want maximum penetration and I want the thing to hit like a Mack truck. That's, a second thing I do. The third thing and final thing, I shoot my practice tips a lot during the summer. I do shoot field points, but I'm not going to hunt with field points. So I try to practice with my, practice heads a lot. So that's kind of the stuff that I like to do. I mean, I don't know if that's what you do, but I'd like to hear what you do, what your process is.
Yeah. I mean, I probably put way too much faith in what they're supposed to do versus making sure that they're doing that. I do spin test them as well. I shot mechanicals. Well, I've been back and forth on them over the years, but I started with mechanicals, and then I got into fixed blades because I went on a western hunt and I was shooting some longer distances, and I just wanted that cut on contact. No, nothing's going to happen. Like when I hit it, it's going to cut no matter what. When I spin test them, I do it in my hands just because you put the tip of the broadhead in the palm of your hand, like your left hand, and then you cradle the shaft of the arrow just below the fletchings in your right hand between your thumb and index finger, and you blow on it just to simulate arrow flight, and you can actually feel any wobble or imperfection, and you can identify your better arrows, your better tuned arrows for whatever broadhead you've got on there. But I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You said that they're designed to fly like a field tip, so as long as you can put the arrow where you're intending it to go, you shouldn't really have any issues. I mean, and that gets into a whole nother conversation about bow tuning. So like you said, just the only other thing to really consider is, shooting a heavier arrow. More moving parts up front, you're gonna lose penetration. So if your solution to better penetration is a smaller diameter arrow, put an outsert on that thing to give yourself more weight up front, more kinetic energy downrange. You're not going to have any problems.
Yeah, and I guess to say we could get into arrow tuning as well, or arrow building, I would try to find an arrow that fits your bow really well too. I mean, you don't want an arrow that's not going to tune in your bow. So right now I'm shooting a 340 spine and I'm shooting a mechanical broadhead, but I found that's like the happy medium where my broadheads shoot really good, and I also get really good penetration, and they also the kinetic energy is really good as well at the animal. basically, like I said, I've could have lucked out over the years, and every broadhead that I've pulled out of the package that's mechanical, I've had fly pretty true, and haven't had a lot of them not really have any imperfections in them. So those three things are three big things I would really look into for mechanicals. But for fixed blades, this is a total different game as well, in my opinion. So with fixed blades, there's a lot of things you can do and a lot of different methods that guys use to tune them. So, if you want to start off, start by, saying what your methods are and how you start, tuning your fixed blades.
When I'm considering shooting a fixed blade, whether it's for me or for someone else, I think the first question I'm going to ask is how much weight are you pulling? Because for me, that's going to determine how fast your arrow's going, and that's going to determine how much kinetic energy you're going to have, and again, which results in penetration. So, for example, I got my wife a new bow this year. It was the first new bow she's had in like 4 years, and I mean, she doesn't really hunt a lot, but she does like to shoot. We went out together twice this year, and she got her first shot at a deer with a bow. I mean, she missed, but it was enough to make her want to do it again, luckily. But anyway, when we got that bow and we got it, we were setting it up, she was only pulling about 46 pounds is what we measured it out to be. And that's just not enough weight, in my opinion, to count on a mechanical blade to function properly. So right away, I knew I wanted her to be shooting a fixed blade. We got 5mm, was it fives? Yeah, I think we got 5mm axis, Easton axis arrows for her. Knowing she was going to shoot fixed blade, I went ahead and fletched them with the AAE Max fletchings, and I just put them on, straight. No offset, no helical, nothing. Just low poundage, just get the arrow out there and hit what you're aiming at. If she could do that, I knew she would be able to kill a deer. No outsert, just the regular HIT aluminum insert from Easton, and I mean, that was that.
What grain arrow was she shooting?
I think hers are 400s with the lower poundage like that. So
okay.
A stiffer spine, a little more rigidity to the arrow.
Yep. So you're wanting her to pack a punch. I mean, you're wanting, with the lower poundage, you want her to pack a punch and get as much penetration as you can get. And I had the same thing with my wife, and she's now built herself up to shoot heavier poundage. She's like right around 54 to 55 pounds, and she's shooting, now I have her shooting a mechanical. But it was the same thing. I didn't want her, she was a new, when she was a new bow hunter, a lot of people tend to stick close to that shoulder. So I really wanted to get, more confidence in her head and in my head that wherever she was going to hit that deer, she was going to get the best penetration she could get out of that arrow and broadheads, setup.
Yep. Yeah, it's one of those things where there's always an exception, it seems like. There's no hard and fast rule, but there are so many different combinations that you can come up with based on draw weight, draw length, whether it's 100 or 125 grain tip, fletching size, fletching, I don't know if you want to call it style, like if it's a straight fletch or an offset or a helical.
Or a helic, yep.
Yeah, there's so many variables, and it's, again, you can adjust your sight to make the arrow hit wherever you want it to, but I mean, unless you really understand why the flight is different, you're not going to have to worry about the tuning process based on all the factors that are involved. Like if your definition of accuracy is putting 3 arrows in a 10-inch paper plate and saying, well, that would hit lungs, then that's totally, you're right. And if that's all you need, then it works for you, then good for you. But if you're the kind of guy that wants to, or girl that wants to put, a fixed blade broadhead in a 1.5-inch group every time, there's some other factors that go into that. And
well, for me, in my experience, I've shot a lot of fixed blades, like I said, when I was growing up, and I played with a lot of them too. In my opinion, smaller profile fixed blade broadheads usually are easier to tune.
Yeah.
And the reason, in my eyes, the reason is because there's a lot less kind of going on. So like, a lot of people have seen slick trick broadheads, or those broadheads that are like 1 inch cutting diameter. The smaller ones.
Yep.
Those ones, in my opinion, are a little easier to tune. Now, a couple things that I take into consideration, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, but this is just what's worked best for me, is I like to align my fletchings with the broadhead blades. So what I mean by that is when you look down the arrow, the three fletchings on the arrow, I want them in the exact same line as the blades on the broadhead. Now
Yes.
a lot of guys will shoot four fletched arrows, and that's like a new thing and kind of growing. So in that instance, I would put the 3 blade broadhead offset in between each vein, if that makes sense. But for speaking terms, let's talk as a 3 fletched arrow, because that's what basically everybody does. So I like to line those up. It just cuts the wind better, and they tend to fly a lot better. So the next thing I like to do is always spin test them. All broadheads could have imperfections, and they could have some wobble tendencies, and you just want to get rid of those. And a couple things that I like to do, and when I look for if any imperfections, is one is a bent broadhead, two is an insert that isn't square to your arrow shaft. So when you go to a pro shop, or even if you do it yourself and you cut the arrows, a lot of those arrows don't get cut square, and you want your insert and your broadhead to be flush to your arrow, and that could really just the littlest imperfection without that arrow being square, that can really throw off the wow, or throw off the spin of your arrow and your broadhead as well. You could have a bent arrow insert and some other things that can throw it off as well, but those are the three that I really find that can make the most impact. So what I like to do is, if there's an imperfection in the spin, I like to take sandpaper, or there's some devices out there, arrow squaring tools G5 makes, when I know that you put your arrow in this and you just kind of run it back and forth, and it squares off the end of your arrow. Then put your insert back in, and then put your broadhead back in. So spin that. So that might take it out. You can always change the blades in your broadhead, and if that doesn't fix it, then you have a bent broadhead, and your broadhead's probably bad. So that's a big thing to look at. And then once you get out into the field, and now let's say you're going to tune your fixed blade broadheads with your field points. So what I like to do is take a fixed blade and take a field point and get out there at 20 yards and shoot your field point. See where it hits. So let's say it hits right dead square in the middle. Let's take your fixed blade, shoot that. Let's say it's a couple inches low. So what you want to do with that is you want to adjust your rest now. If it's low, if you're shooting low, you want to go opposite of your arrow. So you want to move your rest up, and don't go a lot. A little goes a long way. Just start bumping it up a little bit. And even if you're shooting right, you want to move it left. Or if you're shooting left, you want to move it right.
Yeah. You always go opposite with your rest, and then you follow it with your pins.
Exactly. Yep. So if you're sighting in your bow, you want to follow the arrow, with your pins, not with your rest. With your rest, since, for speaking terms, we're hitting low, so we want to move that rest, just bump it up a little bit. Go back, shoot it again. It'll start moving, and they'll start getting tighter and tighter groups. That's something I would definitely try. That works best for me. But really try to line those fletchings up with your broadhead blades, because that makes a ton of difference. I mean, I've seen broadheads that weren't lined up with them, and guys will pull their hair out because they're not flying right. They're hitting 6 inches low. The next one's hitting 3 inches high, and it's like, what the heck's going on? I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
And
it really does.
I don't know if that's what you do, but that's what's worked best for me.
Yeah, I absolutely do that when I'm shooting a fixed blade, which I did this year all deer season. And to do this, the first thing you need to do when you're building those arrows, or if you have somebody, cut and insert them for you, is to use that hot melt. Don't use an epoxy, because you want something that you can heat up.
Yep.
Because you need to be able to rotate that insert once your broadhead is affixed to the end of the arrow. So, and with that, you never want to hold a flame directly to the arrow shaft. Like, don't ever put heat directly to carbon, or even like on an FMJ.
Yep, it breaks it down.
Yeah, just because it has aluminum on the outside doesn't make it okay. Like, you always want to put the heat either on the broadhead or on your field tip, and and a lot of times you don't even need to use a flame. You can use hot water. That's the least detrimental to the arrow.
Yep.
Having the broadhead blades in the same plane as your fletching, you're cutting the same wind. Everything just lines up.
It's cutting the wind the same. You don't have components working against each other. They're all working together.
Exactly. And that's, again, it's just one of those things that you can do to eliminate that margin for error. It's not a huge thing, but, at 30 yards, you're not going to see a difference. But maybe at 40 or 50, or if you're preparing for an elk hunt or something like that where you need to be confident, at 50 plus, that's where those little things are going to start making a difference, and you're going to see it.
Right. And like Justin was talking about a little bit ago with the flame, I'm just going to reiterate, do not put the flame on the arrow. I actually keep older broadhead that this is what I do it for. I'll put that broadhead in. I'll put heat right directly to the broadhead with, some needle nose pliers or, some vice grips or something holding on to that. So when that glue, that whole broadhead the ferrule will heat up, and then it'll heat up, inside the arrow and make that glue where you can move it and then just start turning it. But make sure you get that insert back in flush with the insert / broadhead back in flush with that arrow, because that can make a pretty big difference. So don't put it right to the arrow. Be safe with that, because it will break down that carbon or whatever you're using. Even if you have an outsert, I don't recommend putting it on the outsert as well. Put it right on that broadhead or field point, like Justin said. Field point is kind of difficult because you can't see the blades with the fletching, so I just get an old broadhead, put it in there, and then you can line it up as the broadhead heats up.
Yeah, you don't ever want to put direct heat on carbon.
So, that's basically what I have. It's not a whole lot of rocket science. There's a little bit of thinking going into the with the fixed blades. I'm not saying it's gospel, but it's what works for me. And also shoot those fixed blades a lot. Get a practice head that you just shoot in the summer. Start tearing up targets, man. You can't shoot enough. And same with mechanicals. And I'm like a gear junkie. I'm always trying to find that little inch that I can get better than last year. So, if I'm shooting this, I'm going to try something new out just to see if it's a little better, or something that catches my eye. I'm just trying to get that little step up every year. And, I haven't really found anything that really beats out what I'm shooting now, but not saying that's not out there. And I'm a fixed blade guy at heart. I really am. I grew up shooting Thunderheads and Zwickey broadheads. My dad started me with Zwickey broadheads, Thunderheads, and you name it. I shot Slick Tricks. I shot some Wasp broadheads. Back in the day, it's like, I'm trying everything, and I'd like to find something that I can up the ante with a fixed blade, because in my eyes, once you get them tuned and shooting right, they can be fail safe. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about the blades not opening up. Once you hit that animal, you're hitting with a punch, you're getting maximum penetration, you got a lot of kinetic energy. With the right setup, it can be lethal for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things you just need to ask yourself, what do you want to give up? You can make them all as accurate as they can be. Again, you still got to do your part and know that you can put the arrow where you mean for it to go. But, are you okay with sacrificing, penetration if something happens, or if it's a marginal shot? That's fine if you are. You're probably going to be pulling a heavier poundage on your bow. You're going to shoot a faster arrow. If speed is your thing, then mechanical's the way to go. But if it's more, I don't want to say, the slow game, but if the idea of penetration and, cut on contact is what gives you that confidence, then, go with a fixed blade. And one thing we did not say with fixed blades, now that I'm talking out loud here again, is your fletching. For me, when I build an arrow to shoot a fixed blade broadhead, I put a helical on that fletching. I use a longer fletching, like a 3.5, 3.5 inch longer vane, and I put a 30-degree offset on it, which is a helical. And for me, get that thing spinning as quick as you can. Like as soon as that knot comes off the string, that arrow is catching as much air as it can, and it's stabilizing instantly. It's not going to stabilize in 20 yards. It's stabilized 2 feet off the end of the string. Again, with that insert rotated to align the blades with your fletching, and putting that maximum spin on the arrow as quick as you can get it out there. I mean, that's really the best you could ask for. You don't typically need an outsert with a fixed blade broadhead. I have run them with the brass inserts before, just for a little added weight, again, for better penetration. But, I mean, you're going to sacrifice downrange speed. So it's one of those things where if you know you're going to be, shooting, I'd say 35 yards or closer, your arrow's going fast enough, you probably don't need it. But if you want that peace of mind, or if you're shooting a bigger animal, like an elk or a moose or something, that added weight will go a long way.
Definitely. Well, I really don't have any closing thoughts, honestly. I mean, we covered it all. We're up here on time, and like I said before, this is the way we do things, and they work well for us, and hopefully somebody takes something from it. Practice as much as you can. I mean, that'd be my biggest thing, is practice as much as you can with these practice tips, or whatever you decide to use. But get in a hunting scenario. Shoot them from a tree stand. Shoot them from the ground.
Yeah.
Do everything.
Yeah, just get out there and do it. Practice makes perfect. I mean, they say that for a reason. And as we all know with bow hunting, there tends to be a lot more things that can go wrong than can go right.
Yep.
The more prepared you are and the better understanding you have for your equipment, the better off you're going to be in that moment.
For sure. Well, but I do have some closing thoughts, and this is a little off topic, but as we wrap this up, I do want to let everybody know that we finally got some hats back in stock. Not a ton of them. There's 20 in total. I didn't do a big quantity this time, just because I'm trying to feel everybody out and see what they want. I'm going to put a post up on Instagram probably today, sometime later today, Friday, or this weekend. And if everybody wants one, hit me up on Instagram. They're going to be $15 a piece. If I do need to ship them, you guys will have to pay for shipping. It's like $2 or $3 for shipping, so around $16 to $17 a hat. They're really cool. I went a different route this time, and I think they turned out a lot better, but I am in the process still of getting some designs done for some sweatshirts and some t-shirts and some winter hats as well. I don't know the time frame on those. I'm still trying to work with manufacturer right now and trying to get all that stuff done and get prices on it, but I do have a run of hats done right now, so first come, first serve. I will put some images up either, like I said, today or this weekend, so everybody can see them, and we'll go from there.
Sweet. Looking forward to seeing those.
Yeah, and that's basically how I'm funding this podcast. So if you guys can please help out a little bit. I'm not trying to make bank by any means, but I am trying to justify, all this gear and, hosting fees every year. It adds up, and it's all out of pocket right now. So I'm trying to get some funds back in the old bank account, so to keep the podcast going for sure. So any way you guys could help, I appreciate it, and I already do appreciate your support and everything you guys do and all your downloads. Please keep it up, and please keep spreading the word. That's all I got.
All right. Well, we got a call scheduled here in 2 more days with our next guest for the 1 hour episode coming out on Monday.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a cool one.
Yeah, a little teaser there, but yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait. It's going to be a good one. So, thanks everybody for downloading and listening, and we will talk to you Monday.